If you're a parent with a child that attends private school, or you're thinking about sending your child to a private school, it's important to know that some schools are much better than others at helping students with learning and attention issues. I think that's something that can be said of schools across the board, but this is specifically for my private school or considering private school parents. So for an example, an independent school for students with learning disabilities is a private school that specializes in teaching kids with these issues. Other schools may not offer as much support. They might not even admit students who struggle in certain areas. And so I just want to put a plug in here for greatschools.org. That's greatschools.org. They're a place you might want to check out to search for schools in your area and find ones that might serve your child best. High level reference there. From there, you could compile a list of schools that you might want to reach out to learn more, but that's a great resource to start with. It's also important to know how special education law affects private schools. If your child qualifies for special education and you choose to send them to a private school, they may be able to receive some special education services that are paid for by the public school district. And so here's some key things I want you to know about private school and special education. Number one is when it comes to evaluations for special education services. Federal law requires that public school districts look for and evaluate students who are suspected of having disabilities. And this requirement is called Child Find and applies to students who attend private schools as well as those who attend public schools or who are homeschooled. And so this means that if your child's teachers think they might have a learning disability, you can request an evaluation that is paid for by the public school system. Decisions about evaluating private school students are made by the public school districts where the private school is located. And so it's a good idea to talk with your child's teacher before you send a letter requesting an evaluation. And the district will consult with your child's school before deciding whether your child needs one. And if the district agrees to an evaluation, it's responsible for arranging and paying for those tests. Number two is equitable services. If your child qualifies for special education, you can make a choice. You can move your child to your local public school so they can receive the full range of special education services, or you can have them stay at the private school and get what's called equitable services. And so equitable services are paid for through public funding, and this funding is set aside specifically for students with disabilities whose parents placed them in private schools. But because this funding is so limited, your child might receive fewer free services if they attend private school than if they just switch to the public school. For example, they might receive fewer one-on-one sessions with a speech therapist. And so it's important to keep that in mind when it comes to the decision around sending your child with special needs to a private school. Third is a service plan. And so if you choose to send your child to a private school, the school and the district may create what's called a service plan, and it's also called an individual services plan. And this written plan is similar to an IEP, but a service plan tends to be less comprehensive than an IEP. All right. Number four is teacher certification. So it's important to note that public schools have strict guidelines for special education teachers. Teacher qualifications are spelled out in the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and in each state's education laws. Private schools may use different hiring standards. For example, the staff members at an independent school for students with learning disabilities are likely to have as much training in special education as the staff at a public school. But the same may not be true of the staff at, say, a military school or a parochial school. Okay, so that's something to absolutely keep in mind. What are the certifications for teachers in private schools that are responsible for the education services of students who've been identified with a disability? Fifth is accommodations. Private schools are usually willing to provide certain accommodations like extra time on tests and assistive technology. A private school may also allow your child to be tutored at the school during the class day by a private tutor that you pay for. But it's also possible that your child's needs may be so great that the school will recommend you send them to a public school that has more resources. And so that's something that's important to consider. What type of accommodations exist at the private school, and do those accommodations fit the needs or meet the needs of your child? Then lastly, I want to talk about placement decisions. And so when a school district determines that a child is eligible for special education, the district will also decide which learning environment and special services are appropriate for the child. Parents are a part of the team that makes this decision, which is referred to as placement. So for many students with learning and attention issues, the most appropriate placement is in a general education classroom in their local public school. But in some cases, the district will agree to what's called an out-of-district placement. And so that's when the district you reside in agrees to pay for the cost of sending your child to a school that is approved by the state to educate students with a certain range of disabilities. And this happens when the district agrees that your child's local public school can't meet your child's needs. So if you and the district disagree about which placement your child needs, you may want to consider a strategy called unilateral placement. Unilateral placement. And this process involves notifying the district before enrolling your child in a private school. However, to get the district to pay for the tuition, you'll most likely have to use a dispute resolution process or option like due process in order to convince the school that the tuition at the private school is justified because that school is able to meet needs that the local school district is not able to meet. All right. So if you have any additional questions on that, feel free to hit me up, let me know. And that is a wrap on private schools and the laws that govern special education in them. All right.